So why don't we get started? I want to thank you everybody for coming and having fun with us tonight, this evening. What we're dealing with is an increasing and exploding universe of people that need to access corporate systems. That number is going up dramatically, especially with the internet. It's now not just employees, it's partners, it's supply chain participants, it's the general public. Organizations have spent billions of dollars over decades building their internal IT enterprise application infrastructure. And it's imperative that these employees and identities be given access to the right applications in order for them to participate in the way the company does business, whether you're a part of the accounting team, the marketing team, the customer service team, or the sales team. You need access to certain kinds of IT assets in order to get your job done. In the face of that are regulatory requirements and compliance, right? There is the philosophy of least privilege. That is, you are given access to only as much information and application as is useful for you to do your job, and no more. Over the course of time, all of those identities change their roles. Sales reps become managers, they become executives, they become other things, and their access has to change accordingly. Statistically, over 3/4 of all data breaches occur with stolen credentials that are legitimate. You leave an organization, some organizations cannot extract you quickly enough, you go work for a competitor, you can still get in and download the customer database. Not a good thing. Yeah. Intellectual property, not a good thing. We have a customer, healthcare payer in the US, which is basically an insurance company.
HMO.
Yeah. And their philosophy is anything that can be stolen will be stolen. Yeah. It's not nailed down, and everything is for sale on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we potentially have a very large vulnerability now based on the generation that's coming in that might be have lack of discretion,
yeah.
Indiscreet or careless. It's a criminal intent that stands to get a lot of money out of the information. Yes. And you have readership that is potentially going to be victimized in a very large way for that. What are they most concerned about?
It's a mixture of, for the big organisations, the insider theft is always a big issue. And then
that's the biggest one, isn't it?
Yeah, the psychology of, Snowden, it doesn't matter what your defences are. Yeah. If somebody who has got all the legitimate authorisation decides to give away your secrets, that's a big one. The current thing is advanced persistent threats, where they are no longer just spamming everybody, they are particularly targeting you. They know you're a member of the golf club, they actually start talking to you about the golf over maybe 3 months before they actually do their real attack. Their real attack on you is at the same time as they've done a big denial of service attack on your organisation, and the actual spear phishing email has used all of this personal data to really know what you're interested in, what you're really, what's going to hit your buttons in terms of you're really interested in that, and that if you see those words, you're just going to click on it because it's something you're really interested in. So those kind of advanced persistent threats, actually specifically targeting individuals, very difficult to fight against. And we've had plenty of chief information officers, security officers that have been fooled by these things, by their own internal sort of testing to see who they could get, and the person that they tend to get sometimes is the person that they most shouldn't.
In the Cold War, they'd call that the honey trap, and it's a digital honey trap, isn't it?
That's the nature of the problem. I mean, when we're talking about these systems, we're talking always three components: hardware, software, and wetware. Wetware being us,
operator.
The problem with wetware, in a sense, people, is that unlike hardware and software, they don't they can't be reduced to simple chains of cause and effect, because each individual can bring different forms of judgment, disposition, kind of bits of knowledge, assumptions, and so on. So you subject person A to this scenario when they will behave like that, but person B may well behave like that.
And sometimes you get people who are specifically, you don't want your receptionists to be unfriendly, you don't want people working in the healthcare sector to be unpersonable, and so these people tend to be easier to get data from because they are inclined to help. And so you go to exactly those people whose whole role is meant to be helpful, and they will help you.
Yeah. The dilemma here, of course, is that precaution and suspicion always has a price. Yeah, we all know this with banks, for example. Now, automatically monitor patterns of expenditure on particular accounts or cards, and if the system tags up what seems to be an anomalous pattern of usage, they put a freeze on the thing, which then maybe there may have been no breach, but then the individual user is frozen out of accessing their own thing on the phone, livid to their bank, trying to get it reinstated. So
to what side? Yeah, exactly. We were talking about before. Over too much security, and you err on the side of caution, and you can affect your business. It's like every bit of new technology. You don't want to even slow down the speed of transactions, let alone actually stop them. Even just slowing down by milliseconds in big organisations can reduce the amount they could. In Amazon, if its security system slowed down the speed at which you buy things, it would slow down its rate of revenue.
If you build that into your business model, as long as the failure isn't catastrophic, then you just write it off as a normal cost.
Well, it's like theft for retail, right? Yeah. You know it's going to happen, you just do it.
You build it into the price.
Yeah, if you had people with machine guns on all the doors of all the shops, there'd probably be less theft, but it's less shops.
So it's a case of working out what you need to protect. You can't protect everything.
Well, that's what our healthcare customer said when I asked the Chief Information Security Officer, what is your primary objective? So what would it be for a CISO? He said, protecting the integrity of the brand. Which I was very surprised coming from a Chief Information Security Officer. I thought it would be much more technical than that. He said secondary was protecting the privacy of our customers, and third was providing the best customer experience. None of those were technical. And I asked him, a very technical guy.
But also quite forward-thinking, as opposed to having a very narrow view of what his role was.
Right, very unique, actually.
Yeah, he was obviously somebody who did get the bigger picture. And it was, what are the end consequences of your security system not working, of your data being compromised, of your customers, seeing you at your worst and beyond what you would want to be. And yes, it's brand integrity that goes. Some might have actually articulated that as share price, depending on the organisation.
Well, from his point of view, if they had failed an audit and that became public because they have to disclose that, and they lost one of their major clients with 50,000 employees, that would be the worst possible outcome. So he was able to make that translation, but that's not true of every Chief Information Security Officer that I've talked to. Do you find that in your readership?
It obviously varies organisation to organisation, but they're moving from being purely a technical kind of role to a more business-oriented role. And again, it depends. I mean, things like, even if at one time it was thought, if you have somebody putting ridiculous things up on your website because they've broken into it, and it's a really embarrassing thing, and therefore how secure is your data? And you do see share prices dip, but they jump back up again. People have very short memories. It doesn't actually, unless people have had their money stolen, it doesn't actually affect people for very long.
Majid, now,
wow.
So, will it ever be safe to go on the internet, or is this going to be post-apocalyptic
It'll be
Mad
as
Max?
safe as it is to go on the street.
Well, but in the 70s it was pretty bad.
It depends where you are, which neighbourhood are you in, how are you behaving in that neighbourhood. But I think more broadly, I think the message here is that I think this environment can be functional and secure, especially for business, if it's led by an approach of adaptability. Yeah, the idea that you can't stick to an old business model and old ways of working in the face of change, especially in the face of people's practices and the way they change. If there's one thing we've learned over the last 15, 20 years, you can't get the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
You have to adapt. You have to have new ways of working, new business models, new approaches, which works with that change and kind of, sort of surfs the wave of change rather than trying to hold desperately to the way things were. Yeah.
Right. One of the things that is certainly a challenge for all of our organizations is trying to reconcile the competing forces of performance, as you mentioned before, security, and flexibility, which have really never been adequately serviced so that they could all coexist harmoniously, right? It's always been one or the other. So I want to thank you all for attending our evening here.